So, it's 1999. Ravenloft is dead. TSR filed for bankruptcy. Second edition is about to be over with, and changes are afoot. So since the bankruptcy of TSR, they ended up being bought out by Wizards of the Coast. I think for us real Dungeons and Dragons fans who had been fans from many years, the 80s, this was kind of a sad thing to lose TSR and just be bought out by another company. Now, I'm not saying that Wizards of the Coast was going to come along and purposely screw things up and all that kind of stuff. They saw an opportunity and they took it. They wanted to buy out a company they thought was viable. It's the way business works. It's fine. Second edition was dead. And the reason being was because a new company takes over. They want to rebuild. Let's just start a new edition. Let's do a third edition. That way we can put out whole new base products, and people have to buy the whole new base products. We'll come out with a new player's handbook, a new dungeon master's guide, a new this, a new that. That'll bring in a good stream of revenue if we can pitch this third edition right. Bring us a good stream of revenue and get our company jump started real good. So I can see why third edition came along, and second edition had been around for a very long time, especially compared to these days now, where I think we're on the 5th, 6th edition. Who knows? But just a word on third edition. Third edition's all right. It has its problems. It would have to be revamped to 3.5 a few years from now, or a few years from then when it started. And it does have a few things that are better than second edition. But I grew up on second edition. I played second edition, and honestly, I won't give another edition a chance. Whether that's fair on my part or not, maybe a fault with me, but that's just the way it is. So we're in our dark days. Wizards of the Coast now owns Dungeons and Dragons. A new edition is coming out. Ravenloft will not be a part of that edition. But wait, something smart happened in the world of business for a change. A little known company to most people by the name of White Wolf, who had made a few products here and there, mostly like Vampire the Masquerade and a couple of other Dungeons and Dragon type role-playing games. Now, they weren't a big company. They weren't going to be on the list of Forbes 500 anytime soon, but they had a good reputation with most people. But they did not have the even back then in 1999, 2000, it was still hard to find their products. You basically had to order them through a catalog, the internet, or a specialty store. It wasn't like you could go to your local bookstore and buy the stuff like you could Ravenloft. Not at that time. White Wolf came along and went to Wizards of the Coast and pitched them, we would like to publish Ravenloft products. White Wolf saw the jewel that was Ravenloft. They knew Ravenloft had a lot of potential. And since White Wolf was versed in the horror genre, hell, you can even say that Ravenloft was a kind of response to products like what was the Arkham horror type role-playing game that was around that, was going on around then, and products like White Wolf were filling a niche that Dungeons and Dragons wasn't filling. And amazingly, Wizards of the Coast said, okay, I tell you what, You pay us a licensing fee. We'll license out the Ravenloft intellectual product to you, and you can make Ravenloft products. A win-win. It's a win for Wizards of the Coast, who basically can sit on their ass, not do anything, and say and get paid money for a product for somebody else publishing and working on products that they owned. It's a win-win for White Wolf if they can pull it off, because that way they can start making a profit and become a bigger company than they already are by getting to really play with the big boys. It's a win-win for the fans, because if White Wolf doesn't screw it up, doesn't just come along and wreck everything, then we get our beloved Ravenloft back. And White Wolf did another thing that was really good, was when they hired a bunch of the Ravenloft writers, the people who had been writing Ravenloft and putting it in the direction it had been going. They smartly hired a lot of them to come up with these new products. There is one thing that I think was a huge mistake, and I think which would eventually be partly responsible for the downfall of White Wolf Ravenloft, is that they were unable, or were not willing, I've never really understood the reasoning behind this, to produce modules. For some reason they didn't do any modules. They weren't going to do any, and I think that was a terrible mistake. It was the modules that progressed 75% of the storylines and happenings in the world of Ravenloft. It was the modules that kept everything alive. It was the modules that were a lot of the outstanding products. It was the modules that I loved the most. And it was, the modules that made you feel like you were really there and had a stake in it. So to take that away was a big, big handicap, I think, and a huge mistake. Huge mistake. I still to this day can't get over that part of the White Wolf Ravenloft. However, be that as it may, some Ravenloft would be considered to be better than no Ravenloft, as long as it was done right. And it was done right. So in 2001, that October of 2001, Ravenloft finally came back, and we have the core rulebook for Ravenloft 3rd edition. Now, there was a little bit of stumbling out the gate. There was a special edition of the core rulebook that was supposed to come with some kind of sleeve jacket or bag or something and be numbered, limited numbered, and they had a little snafu with that, but I didn't worry about that. I just waited for the regular printing of the book to come out, and I remember it well, and I remember when I got it. Not exactly sure of what to expect, to be honest with you. Not to be sure what to expect, because this was a 3rd edition as far as the rules and stuff go, and I didn't know anything really much about 3rd edition. I didn't pick up any 3rd edition until a little bit after Ravenloft came out, because I wanted to make sure it was something I could get into. Didn't know what to expect, if White Wolf was going to say, hey, we like what you guys did with Ravenloft, but we want you to do this. Or if Wizards of the Coast had said, hey, you can do Ravenloft, but you got to do certain things like this. So you never know what to expect when something like that happens. But here's the core rulebook. This is going to be the format from now on. A domain of dread, a world of gothic adventure. A night of eternal terror, a world ruled by fear and horror. Vampires who rule the night, shapeshifters who prowl the forest, eldritch ghouls and undead skeletons who prey upon a fearful populace. If ever a world needed heroes, it is the world of Ravenloft. A Ravenloft setting takes one of the classic role-playing game worlds and brings it up to date for the 3rd edition. For 3rd edition, using the D20 rule system. Players assume the roles of brave adventurers facing ultimate evil in hopes of saving the world, all in a gothic setting of higher adventure. And so it is. First thing you're going to notice, now again, since we're doing the good hardback books things, there's no map. This is the map you get. Gone are the days of box sets and fold out maps. But as you can see, it's a lot more clear. It's a lot better map than that what was in the Domains of Dread. Okay, so there we go. And this is the way the structure of this thing went. Now the art was a mixed bag. Okay, we're going to talk about that right out the way. And they have a geography type map here and a political map in the front. And some of the art was good, some of the art was and some of the art was frankly terrible. But still, it's still a good. This is a very good book. Very good. Though not quite as detailed in a lot of things as Domains of Dread was. However, this was still a very good book and very detailed. And it had not really changed much of anything. They didn't come in and make any massive alterations to Ravenloft. They didn't come in and just change things around because Ravenloft had failed as a product. Although Ravenloft had not really failed, it was the company TSR that failed. So if something's not broken, don't fix it. They make a few tweaks to it. You have to tweak certain things as well to make it 3rd edition compatible. They added a lot of the new domains, mainly with the Islands of Terror and the clusters. And they updated the timeline, so stuff like the Shadow Rift and stuff like that could happen. And as you can see, they still did cultural level, landscape, Tempest, settlements, the folk, trade, diplomacy, the law, character classes. They still did a lot of stuff like that. Okay, and they expanded the clusters. We have the Frozen Realms now, which they take Sanguinia, or however you pronounce it, from the very first black box domain and bring it back and stick it next to Vorstock or Vorostakov, or however you pronounce it. And they get populations and stuff. Shadowlands is in there. So, and instead of skipping over like Domains of Dread did, this gives a overview of a lot of these domains. They brought back Roshima Teo, which had disappeared in Domains of Dread, but now it's back. But they got rid of Ikath, as you can see. And so they go over the basics of the VR guides. But you have to remember now, this is a player's handbook, okay? So a player can pick this up and it's not going to give anything away. Even like here, like let's take, where did I see that? Forlorn. We all know, because of Castles Forlorn, who the domain lord is. But that's just if you play the adventure, okay? This is reading like you're just a regular citizen of Ravenloft who's about to start a new campaign. So they don't tell you who the Lord is, okay? And this book does not have any descriptions of any of the Dark Lords. Although, this book does bring Azalin back. Azalin is back. He's back in control of Darkon. Darkon is getting back to normal. Although Alec 2 has still become Necropolis and Death still rules that city, Azalin rules the rest of the domain. How did he come back? Well, don't know. There's a brief description of him coming back in here because the populace would know that. Everybody would know that because, you know, he says I'm back and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, at first I was a little peeved by that because that none of the Dark Lords are described or nothing is known. But then if you look in the back of the book, there's an advertisement. Secrets of the Dread Realm and Dungeon Master Scream. Okay, and Secrets of the Dread Realms is basically the books of the Dark Lords. It's for a Dungeon Master, basically, and it gives a description of all the Dark Lords, their stats, and for all the domains described here in this book. And I remember saying, oh, okay, I see what they're doing. Instead of putting everything in one book like Domains of Dread, this being the core rulebook, they leave stuff vague so players can read this and they're going to come out with a supplement for the Dungeon Master. At first I was kind of teed off by that, I will admit. But then I read the book, and the book is a great read. And I like the addition of the new domains that had been forgotten, the new clusters. I like the updated timeline, and I like the fact that everything's somewhat of a mystery again, and that future products would explain that stuff. And I start thinking, you know what? I see why they're doing that, where they're coming from that. First of all, they had to do it for necessity. They could not put everything they wanted to in this book. They couldn't put all that material in this book because there was a deadline. They wanted this book out by October, and you know, it takes a long time to write and edit a book. Doesn't care how many people you got working on it. And so there was a timeline crunch, so there was no way they were going to be able to put everything in there, because otherwise the book would have been delayed, and I didn't want the book to be delayed. Second of all, it was money, pure money. You know, let me charge you, and this book was man, how much was it? $30. We'll charge you $30, and though you may not get as much of a stuff as you did in Domains of Dread in it, I understand why they were doing that. We're going to charge you extra for another product, and I was actually okay with it because I wanted Ravenloft to succeed, and I wanted it. For a while I thought it was dead, and then the halls of joy filled out when we found out it was being revived. So I wanted to do anything I could to financially support them, given they put out good products and not change something. And this is a good product. You know, on maybe one day I may say, yeah, Domains of Dread I like better. And then on another day I may say, yeah, the core rule book, I like that one better. So, but most of the time I'm still going to like Domains of Dread better. But this was a very good book, a very good start, very promising start actually. And it read very well, and I was really genuinely excited. I said I knew this group of people. I knew they weren't going to screw up Ravenloft. I didn't think they would, and I think these people are going to take it into the direction they were wanting to take it. And by this book, you can tell they were wanting to do that. So, 3rd edition Ravenloft core book. It was a must-have. It's a great read, and it was a good job. The next product, Secrets of the Dread Realms. Okay. The world of Ravenloft holds many secrets not even its night prowlers may learn. Some are too horrible for sane minds to comprehend. Others simply lie in malignant mist, forgotten by the denizens of the world. Only those with valor or foolishness to confront them can deliver their revelations to the world. And really, all Secrets of the Dread Realms is basically a book that came with a Dungeon Master's screen, as you can see. Okay, with some decent art. And then, there we go. Basically, the stats and history for all of the Dark Lords of the core. Okay, I'm going to make that clear. Of the core. Okay. Now, there's a few things I want to go over. First of all, for some reason they add a new class, the Witch Hunter. Okay, it didn't seem. It seems out of place, but okay. It's like oh man, dang, we forgot to put this class in the core rulebook. Let's slam this in here real quick. I want to go over a couple things though. Alright. Azrael Dak is not the Dark Lord of Sithikithis. Okay? It is. Oh man, do I want to give it away? I won't give it away yet. But I'll give it away in a little while for another product. But he's not the Dark Lord of Sithikis. He's running around acting like he is, but he is not. And I think at this point in time, when this came out, they weren't sure who was going to be the Dark Lord in that domain. Also, if you look at, let's see, some of the art in here, it's reused art from before, from Domains of Dread, except for Aisling. Why the hell that does not fit with any of this? Why that's there, I have no idea. But it details how he came back. Unfortunately, this product does not include any of these, any of the clusters, or any of the Isles of Terror. That pissed me off. That was very disappointing. I'm like, look, I'm willing to give you the chance that you leave all the Dark Lords out of Domains of Dread and put it in another product because you need the money or you need more time. Okay? I'm willing to go along with that. Now, the problem is this book came out 2 months after that. Did they need more time to put all the Dark Lords in here? Then just delay this. You got this out. Okay, this was not delayed. You got this out. It's good to go. But now, just delay this for a little bit. Okay? I know we need the stats for these Dark Lords. But don't half-ass it. This was a very disappointing product to me. I got it because you need it for the Dark Lords. I want to see how Aisling came back. I want to know how he came back. I want to know who the Dark Lord of Sithikis is. And a few other things. But this, it's only half. If you include all the little islands in the Sea of Sorrows and Nocturnal Sea, all the Islands of Terror and all the clusters, it's only half the Domain Lords. And that was unexcusable. And so, that was a failed product for me, to be honest with you. And unfortunately, another failed product is fixing to come out. Denizens of Darkness. It's basically the monster manual for Ravenloft. Ravenloft's monster manual. And let's have a look. Fiends prowl the oppressed world of Ravenloft, inflicting their whims on a terrorized populace. From the cunning werewolves to terrible artificial constructs to the monstrous lords of the domains, evil dominates the night. In the grand tradition of the Monster Manual and Creature Collection, Denizens of Darkness presents a whole new host of enemies for adventurers in the Ravenloft world to face. Malevolent and malign, these creatures lurk in the darkness to be challenged by noble heroes fighting to take back a world that should belong to them. Okay, so 3rd edition, published by Wizards of the Coast, already had a monsters manual. So, you know, that monster's manual had, you know, the basic skeleton stuff like that. Vampires. Okay, so Ravenloft monster manual comes out with monsters unique to Ravenloft. Okay, and a bunch of other stuff. The problem is, one, I don't like this format. It feels like everything's crammed into here and it's too close together. Two, I know you need this. I know this book is needed, okay? I understand that this book is needed, but it's a monster manual, man. And I don't really want a monster manual. Okay? I don't want that. I got a regular one. I'm getting yours now. And it just, I mean, look at that. Look at that art. Art is terrible, man. Some of the things don't have art. This product just feels rushed. It feels rushed and sloppy. And yeah, it's needed. You need it. Have to have it if you want to really have some monsters in Ravenloft with variety that fit the theme. But again, I wasn't too thrilled with this product. But to be honest, it's a monster manual. So while I was happy with the core rulebook, I was very disappointed with Secrets of the Dread Realms. This book to me was It was okay. It was in the middle because it was something needed and it did do what it was supposed to do. Provide with monsters that could be unique, that are unique to Ravenloft and that have a feeling of Ravenloft. But other than that, that was about it. But there was another thing. This last page. This started to tell you what was going to come out and when. And this was very important. It would give me a feeling of hope that, look, they got all these products already planned. I know what's coming and when it's coming. But so far, not a great start. And then along comes Ravenloft Van Richten's Arsenal. Now, I know Rudolph Van Richten, he's supposedly dead. Creatures of the night, be warned. Those who hunt the fiends that prowl the dread realms now have the means to prepare themselves for whatever they face. Included herein are tools and techniques that allow the heroes of Ravenloft to take the fight to the next level. From potent spells to arcane artifacts, the secrets within these pages offer hope against the Legion of Darkness. This book introduces a variety of new weapons to combat the fiends that populate Ravenloft. Included are rules for alchemy, new spells, magical items, and new equipment. Prepare to bring down the forces of evil. Now, I remember when this first came out, or when I saw it in there, I wasn't too thrilled about this book. I was like, oh man, come on, haven't the Van Richten stuff run its course? Come on. I was like, no, come on. However, you're going to see a format here, and I want to show you something with this. You're going to see Dread Possibility. Okay. And basically, this book does what it says. It has like new hero classes, new ways to, new items, new ways to fight. It's a player's guide to enrich heroes. Okay. And it goes over, you know, how to research different types of monsters, how to do a hunt, how to be a successful hero. Of course, they have the tables and stuff in that format for the Dungeon Master, okay? But then they also have the regular type thing. Then you have like different character classes you can be. So it is kind of in the format of the other Van Richten guides, which I thought was good. However, this thing reads like a story. Basically, what it is Van Richten's two adoptive nieces, the Weathermy twins, or the Weathermy sisters, who are the daughters of George Weatherby. And now, if you remember George Weatherby, he was not in a good place in Champions of the Mist. He started out as a meek, good guy, hunter guy type guy. Tragedy had struck him, and now he's just going around killing anything. And hey, collateral damage happens. Pfft, collateral damage happens. So after Van Richen's disappearance, most of the world doesn't really know he's dead, or doesn't really know what's happened to him. The Foxgrove, Weatherby Foxgrove twins. There's Lori, and then there's Jennifer. Their dad is George Weatherby is like their uncle. Okay, his sister married Daniel Foxgrove, who was a prominent guy in Mordant, and he's a good guy. And George's sister died, and they kind of, Rudolph Van Richen and Weatherby were good friends, and so he kind of took them under his wing. And now that Van Richen is gone, Weatherby's off roaming the core, or just roaming around Ravenloft doing stuff. They kind of set up shop in Van Richen's doctor's office, or herbalist shop in Mordant, and kind of took over his family business. They're wanting to become hunters, or hunters like Van Richen and hunters like Weatherby, but they want to kind of try to also bring George Weatherby back from the dark side, or bring him back more towards the light. Of course, their dad doesn't really approve of this, but what you gonna do? If you have daughters, you understand. If you have headstrong daughters, you understand, that you love very much. You understand how hard that is. So this basically is a book penned by the Weatherby Foxgrove girls, and it's them sending correspondence to other famous evil fighters, or people they believe to be fighters of evil. Okay. And each chapter is kind of based off that. They send some correspondence to one of these guys. One of these guys is basically writing them back, telling stories and telling what to do, how this works, that. And then it tells you in the end about that person, about, where that person is really good, where that person is really evil. And then you have a dreaded possibility, which is supposed to really be a campaign adventure, a hook for a campaign adventure. And they do this with several people, and the read is very well done. It's like you're reading a freaking great book, and it gives so many good stories and anecdotes about the world of Ravenloft, how Ravenloft is, what's been going on. It really updates the timeline, to be honest with you, about that. And it goes over the main monsters that were in the VR guides. And so then at the end you have your appendix, and it tells you the stats and statistics of the Foxgrove twins. There they are, right there, and what they're up to. And then it gives a dreaded possibility. And there's George Weatherby, and that's what he looks like now. And then Perseus, okay, there she go. Then it's dread possibility, and because all these people are kind of big time players in different domains, it kind of details what's been going on in those domains, what these people are after, and stuff like that. Lord Balfour de Castile, that's him. And there's a dread possibility, and he's really kind of an evil guy. Agatha Claremont, and it just updates the domain, this guy right here, in so many ways. And I was like reading it was like I was reading a Ravenloft novel, and a real good one that current up the timeline. Jamel Hroth. Some of the characters are more interesting than others, but this book is basically to set up what's going to happen, or basically set some stuff up for later on down the line. And I was real happy with the book, although I didn't think the book technically was needed, because it's basically almost a updated summary of the VR guides and new characters for Ravenloft, new character classes for Ravenloft, new abilities, new items and stuff like that. So I can see where they're coming from on that, but I wouldn't necessarily made it as high a priority as it was. However, I love this. This is a good book. It was great, and it was a great read, and it was well worth it. Highly recommend. Now we're going to come to what I consider the first of the greatest Ravenloft products I think ever came, and that is including modules. I liked the Ravenloft Gazetteers, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Ravenloft Gazetteer Volume 1. These Gazetteers, and there's going to be a couple of them, are my favorite Ravenloft products in existence. I could not believe it myself. I still sometimes can't believe I'm saying that. You all know I'm a module guy. I love the modules. The modules, and especially the box set ones, those are my bread and butter. I love them things. I love them, love them, love them. However, after this came out, I was blown away. If I were to tell you, if you were to ask me, hey man, which 5 Ravenloft products, can you name the top 5, your top 5 favorite Ravenloft products? Sure, Gazetteer 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I don't know how else to say it. Let's see what it is. Legacies of Darkness, Lands of Lore. From the dark and forbidding reaches of Count Strahad's Barovia to the domain of Hazelin's wizard tyrant, occult terrors rule the night. Dark horrors make their home throughout the forests and lands of Cartacus, and a terrible mystery lies at the heart of the goblin-infested Forlorn. Like the Dark Lords who rule them, the lands of the core reflect myriad forms of evil. The first in a series of setting source books, Ravenloft Gazetteer 1 explores some of the legendary domains of the central continent. Included herein are the domains of Barovia, Cartacus, Hazelin, and Forlorn, ready and waiting for bold adventures to explore. Now, when I first got this, I was like, well, you know, I already know all about Barovia. I really already know all about Cartacus because you've had a couple adventures there and you've met Harkon Lucas. Hell, I have the box set on Forlorn. So the only domain I really want to see explored is Hazelin because, you know, it's kind of detailed in the source books, the core source books. You know, the black box, the red box, and domains of dread, but you know, it hasn't been detailed in anything else, and they've never had an adventure there. So I was like, well, so there's only really 1 out of 4 domains that I'm really interested in this product. Man, dang it! I think I'm gonna waste my money. I'm gonna waste my $25 just get this to be a completionist and for 1 product. However, I was so wrong. It's terrible. First of all, I want to get one thing out of the way, though. These Gazetteers, they make Secrets of the Dread Realm irrelevant. They make Secrets of the Dread Realms a waste of time and money. Basically, Secrets of the Dread Realm is so you can have them all now. All the Lords of the Core now. Because in the Gazetteers, they reprint the Dark Lords in Secrets of the Dread from Secrets of the Dread Realms. They reprint them. Every Dark Lord who shows up, who that's in Secrets of the Dread Realm, gets a reprint in their respective Gazetteer for whatever domain you visit them in. So it's kind of once you have all 5, you can just throw Secrets of the Dread Realm on the fire because there's no reason for it. It's just like, well, that was a waste. Okay, now that that's out of the way, basically what this is, this Gazetteer, I'm gonna just call it a Gaz for short, is now is the beginning of Aislin's new scheme. And he gets a person, a scholarly doctor lady, who we don't know really anything about, although a few brief snippets are really mentioned here and there. And she is basically hired by him to go to each domain, write a very detailed report. And when I say very detailed report, I mean very detailed report. Flora, fauna, population, culture, economic, trade pacts, political, who rules, what hotel to stay in what town, okay, the different boroughs of each town, how the place really is, where to eat. I mean, bam, hell, where to shop. Okay, this covers it. And that's what she does. And she often comes into contact with prominent people from these domains. And so she sends her report back to Aislinn, or he sends people to come get the report. And while he's reading it, because this reads like a narrative type book, okay? Like, with these words, I begin a research project that, to my best estimation, will require years to complete to my satisfaction. Okay, so she's writing all this stuff. You're reading it like a great book, and Aislinn chimes in. And he chimes in from time to time. Right here. Anytime you see writing like this, that's him chiming in to his thought, to what has been said. And it's not just like one or two times in each book. And it gives his personality thoughts on everything, and it's just, it makes it so good. Now, of course, it does the same format where it does have a boxed type thing, where this is for dungeon masters. So a player who wants to play Ravenloft can read these books, okay? You just gotta make sure they don't read anything in a box format. And then each domain goes into details of their cities. I'm just gonna go real quick. We're gonna take Hazelin, okay? Landscape, okay? And then here's the Dungeon Master thing at a glance. And then here's an adventure hook. Deal with the landscape. There's the map. Flora. And then here's Dungeon Master stuff. Flora. Fauna. There's Dungeon Master stuff for fauna. The history, okay? Alright? The populace. Appearance. What the people look like. Fashion. Language. Lifestyle and education. These are some of their languages they speak, and their dialect. Attitudes towards magic, religion. Okay. Another secret society. Another Aislinn comment. The Hazelin hero. See, this sets up to how you can be a hero from this domain. Okay. The realm. Government, economy, there's a law enforcement thing, diplomacy. And this lists all the domains that it has diplomatic ties with. Okay? Sites of interest. The cities, where to stay here. And then you have another dreaded possibility, a hook. And then it gives detailed statistics on that city, on how many people are there and all that kind of stuff. And then the other city, where to stay. Another city, another dreaded possibility, where to stay, and then final thoughts about what interest this domain and all that stuff can have for Aislinn. this is what this thing does for every domain of the core. Now, some domains it goes more into detail on because some domains are bigger, and some domains it goes less detail on because a few domains are smaller. But that was all that, okay? And then at the end of the book, final thoughts, you're done. And then you have a couple appendixes. And you have like appendices on new heroes, okay, new classes, magical items, stuff like that. You have new monsters, and this is going to be a staple for basically every one of these things, okay? And most of these are stuff that's like not in the monster manual. And then we get to the Who's Doomed, okay? Now, it's not going to go as much in detail as the box set for like, or for some of these lords, but it's going to give a pretty good background on them. So you have the Dark Lords that were in Secrets of the Dread Realms, but also it gives prominent figures, okay? It tells you about prominent figures in these domains. Madam Eva, okay? She's not a Dark Lord. But it prominent figures in these domains that Tyra Colon. See, she's updated now. There you go. She was Champions of the Mist as well. And most of these are figures, are prominent figures. A few are new, and a few are the Dark Lords. But then a few of these others are ones who had appeared before in a Ravenloft product, and they're bringing them into the 3rd edition. And it's great. It is so great. And then that's it. And that is a tier. The gas. Now, depending on what lands you like, will probably depend on your favorite gas. But this book brings the world of Ravenloft to life in so many ways never even thought of before. I showed you everything that this thing will detail for each domain, and it goes into a lot of detail, and it is so beautifully written. And then not only that, but it's now progressing a story, a new plot by Aislinn, because Aislinn is giving his thoughts about what's going on. Our protagonist, who's working for Aislinn, we don't fully know much about her. We know a little bit about her, but we don't know fully much about her. We don't know what Aislinn's end goal is. She assumes certain things, but Aislinn corrects her. Sometimes she gets put in danger in these gazetteers, and it's like reading a good story. Oh, man, it would have been. I just love them, and I would say buy these things, all 5 of them, 10 times over. And one of the biggest things I miss about Ravenloft, and one of the biggest disappointments I have with Ravenloft ending, is they were unable to finish. They had planned on doing all the Islands of Terror, all of the clusters, all of the domains in both of the seas, and progressing what was going to happen, what Aislinn was up to, and what would happen to our protagonist, and all this stuff. They had planned on doing that. But as you'll see, Ravenloft, White Wolf Ravenloft 3rd edition gets canned. And so I've always, to this day, been so saddened and disappointed, because, man, these things brought the realm of Ravenloft, which had been around 10 plus years, it brought them to life in such a way that had never been done before. And I can't say enough about these things. I could gush over them for hours on end, but we'll move on. But let me just say, if you ever like Ravenloft and you want to know some of the first products to get, surprisingly, it's these from 3rd edition Ravenloft. Up next is Champions of Darkness. Now, Champions of Darkness I was disappointed with. It's basically the darkness within, a nemesis of good yet puppets of evil. The beleaguered men and women who serve the dark powers may achieve their own terrible grandeur in the dread realms, or they may somehow find their way back to the light. In any other world they would be considered villains, in Ravenloft they are champions. Inside this book are rules for creating and developing anti-heroic characters, as well as prestige classes, information on the dark religions and secret societies in the land of the mist, and ideas for running campaigns. Okay, I was very disappointed with this book. Now, I just had my mind blown with the first Gazetteer. So I was like, expectations high on every White Wolf Ravenloft product after that. And that may be a bias, that may be a fault of mine as to why I didn't like this product as much. But this product kind of is not, it wasn't received that great. It has problems. And mostly because it just introduces a bunch of people who are really kind of boring. I don't know how else to say it, and are really not that great. So we have creating the anti-hero, patrons, who's doomed, the campaign in darkness, and some notes. Okay, so basically you're going to get the anti-hero, and this is going to give you some new prestige classes to be able to use in Ravenloft. The problem is that, and there are some cool guys in here, the problem is man, if you're going to start out bad or start out on the edge, you're not going to last that long. Pretty soon you're going to be failing power checks, and you're not going to be. It's kind of anti against what Ravenloft kind of was. It's like you're already starting out with somebody who's failed some power checks. That's basically it, and it kind of takes the fun out of it. So there's that. Next up, let's do this other chapter here. All right, now patrons, and these are the secret societies, and they briefly go over Carnival, Freemen of Falknovia, and a few other secret societies. They're either hit or miss, and of course we already know about a couple of them, but then always to the meat, the Who's Doomed. And these are the Who's Doomed, and a few of them are okay. Most of them are boring. I don't know how else to say it. Jandir Sunstar's in here. They brought him back. They're just boring. The biggest complaint, the biggest bugaboo for everybody, is this Sheriff Von Zarevich, who is this guy here. And he's basically Strad Von Zarevich's sheriff of his domain and his right arm and enforcer of his will. Well, that's against the way Strahd has always ruled his domain and done things. You know, Strahd wants the people to believe he's somewhat of a benefactor human who, dabbles in magic and stuff, but he doesn't want some horrid looking monster dude running around enforcing his will. It's just not how he is. And so that was a big bugaboo to everybody. And the rest of the heroes are just kind of boring. And then it just gives us campaigns of darkness, these terror tips, these tips on how to do an adventure and stuff like that. And it wasn't really that good. So Champions of Darkness, yeah, unless you're a completionist, man, skip this book. It just wasn't that good. Next up is the companion piece to Champions of Darkness, Heroes of Light. And I'm going to tell you, I did not have high expectations for this book after the Champions of Darkness, beacons of hope in a world ruled by dark powers, a few stalwarts stand against the forces of horror, armed with courage, virtue, and the will to strive against overwhelming evil. These heroes risk heart, mind, and soul in deadly battle, sometimes against their own dark desires. Included in this book are rules for creating and develop heroic characters, prestige classes, information on the religions of good in the realm of dread, and ideas for running campaigns focusing on the good fight. It's basically Champions of Darkness, but with good guy, quote, unquote, ish type heroes. Okay? And it's basically done in the same format. Okay? You're going to get a bunch of new classes. And, you know, I think in this one the classes are better. They sure as hell, you know, have the paladin and stuff like that. They sure as hell don't get you halfway in the grave, which didn't kind of make any sense. So this book is already a step up from Champions of Darkness. Then we get the heroic societies in Ravenloft. Okay, so we get, you know, a bunch of good organizations. Okay, you know, it's all right. It's good. It goes into some more background of more. The secret societies and Champions of Darkness was not bad. It went into a bunch of history of what was going on in Ravenloft with them, and this does the same thing but with good organizations. Okay, and then we have the Who's Blessed. Now, the cast of characters in this one of the Who's Blessed are of a hell of a lot more interesting than the cast of characters that were in the other book. And like, I don't know what the hell happened. It's like, why do you think the bad guys would be the cooler ones, but these guys are actually a hell of a lot better, and they're a lot more fun to read. You know, most of these are people we had really not had anything to do with before, seen before. You know, so, and there are a few, all right, a few kind of duds here, but, and this is where I'm going to give away who the Domain Lord of Sithicus is. It's Magna Kolchevich. Now, her, she was a prominent character in Night of the Black Rose. She was with Soth the whole time, and was Soth basically destroyed her gypsy tribe, and he took her kidnapped, but she kind of ended up being forced along with him and his adventure in that book, and he protected her out of necessity, and she worked with him out of necessity to survive, but she was no friend of his. Now, don't get me wrong. So she ended up at the end of the Night of Black Rose. You know, Soth gets his domain, and you know, she's kind of free to go do what she wants, but she never can leave the domain. Soth kind of won't let her. For whatever reason, he keeps her around. So she gathers up a new tribe of gypsies and stuff like that, called the Wanderers, because they're always just wandering around. And in Spectre of the Black Rose, she has a daughter. Okay? And her daughter kills her. That was one of the things I did not like about that book, Spectre of the Black Rose, was I liked Magda. And to kill her off like that, her daughter was basically responsible for her death, okay? And her daughter was just like a selfish brat, and anyways. So her daughter, Enza, was her daughter. Enza became the Dark Lord, basically, of Sithicus. And the remaining tribe of Wanderers that are in the books are roaming the domain and wanting to get revenge on her and kill her. And this goes over the tribe. of those that are left. And Naban was a prominent figure in the book, and it was very interesting. It was a very good read. And then they give you tips on how to play a heroic campaign, and a few little hooks here and there. And so it was a much better product than Champions of Darkness. And it's like supposed to be a companion piece. They're supposed to be like brothers or sisters, but they're very different, and one is a lot better than the other. It's not a must-have by any means, but it's a good book. It's an okay book, but it pales in comparison to the Gaziers. And Gazir 2 finally would come along. Legacies of Terror, Lands of Legend. From the towering forest of Falknovia, clutched in the iron fist of the mercenary king Vlad Dragov, to the efficient and rationally ruled realm of Dour Lamordia, intrigue and terror hold sway. Secret police and elite soldiers enforce their dark goals rule with brutal efficiency. Yet such fanatics are feared less than the undead horrors stalking the streets of Necropolis, and the cruel order is preferred to the ambitious plans of Darkon's enigmatic Aisling Rex. In these northern lands, steeped in magic and warped by the mad desire for conquest, evil never sleeps. The second in a series of setting source books, Ravenloft Gazir 2, examines the northernmost regions of the central continent. Within these pages, the feudal domain of the wizard king Aisling Rex, the damned city of Necropolis, the Republican aristocracy, you know what I'm talking about, of Lamordia, and the tyrannical military realm of Falknovia await the bold-hearted and the daring. So it has those domains. Now, we know all about Necropolis. We know all about Darkon. We had a couple adventures in Lamordia, so we know really a lot about that. But Falknovia's never really, it's been detailed in the source books, and you've had some adventures there, but it's really never gone into too much detail about what's really going on in that domain. So that was useful. But what this book does is it tells us how Aisling came back, what he's done since he's been back, how death is taking his return not well, and what death's plan is to do, and it's just, and what's happened. It updates you on the return of Aisling, basically, and a lot of other things. And it has the exact same format. Okay, she details every realm like she did before. Aisling leaves his comments in here. A little bit more of her history is given. A little bit more hints about what Aisling's plan is given. And then you have, of course, a bunch of who's who in the appendix, and you get a much better picture of Aisling in that one. And yeah, so same format, same great read. I mean, it's just so good. And then let's go over a couple of the people. Of course, we have Aisling and all this stuff. Death, and there's Death, and Vlad Dracov. Ebb is Aisling's dragon. Gongadil, who is brought back. Lady Cassandra, who's a new lady. Vladimir Ludwig. He's been in Ravenloft before. Victor Mordenheim. Adam, his monster. And yeah, that's basically it. But another excellent read. Man, I love these things. And as good as the first one, like I said, the only preference you're going to have is which domains you like better. Because all these are masterpieces. I'm must have. No more said. Okay, so Van Richten is dead, but he's still publishing books. Well, it's not really him. It's the Foxgrove Weathermy twins. says the walking dead arise and meet their match. Risen from graves and musty tombs, foul and living denizens crowd the graveyards and haunt the ruins of the lands within the mist. Driven by their own insatiable desires or controlled by the powers of others, zombies, skeletons, and other members of the embodied dead prowl the dread realms looking for unwary victims. Now their secrets lie revealed for those with the courage and heart to take up the tools of the hunt. Continuing the tradition of the Van Richten Guides, this volume examines the psychology and physiology of Ravenloft's unliving denizens. Within these pages you will find descriptions of their special powers and vulnerabilities, the effectiveness of certain spells on them, and ways to neutralize, destroy, or command them. Included are new variations of creatures and a section for DMs with suggestions for games that focus on the unfortunate creatures that were once living beings. This is basically the VR guide, just like the VR guides, but instead of Van Richten narrating it or telling the story, it's the Foxgrove twins narrating and telling the story and telling past stories about it. And although it does a good job trying to live up and continue the VR guides, it's not as good as the original VR guides. It falls short. And I don't know if that's because, to me, the Foxgrove twins aren't as interesting and I like Van Richten better, or the Walking Dead, okay, zombies, are just not something that a guide should have been made of, or that the format is different. It just doesn't it didn't need to be. This did not need to exist. I'm gonna put it this way. Other products could have came out. This did not need to exist. We do get Raktek Ubel, who was mentioned in the original black box, and then, like a lot of things, forgotten about. Tobin the Many, who's a new type villain, and that is one of the few bright spots of this this book, is it introduces these new villain types, and it goes over the Foxgrove, adventures, and then some stuff that happened and that kind of stuff. So if you want to continue with the VR guides, then yeah, okay, get it. But don't expect don't expect it to be anywhere near as good as the original VR guides, is all I can really say, for the reasons I told you about. Next tip, Gazetteer number 3. Lands of Mystery, Landscapes of Intrigue. The Renaissance-like intrigues of Demlentu, the ambitious machinations of Richmond's ruler, the ghost-riddled land of Mordant. In these ways and more does twisted evil permeate these warped realms, each reflecting the perverse desires of its ruling Dark Lord. The third installment in the Gazetteer setting sourcebook provides an in-depth information on the domains of Demlentu, Mordant, and Richmond, including stories of Mordant's lost families and rare insights into the peculiar customs of Demlentu and Richmond. Daring and suitable adventures may take their place among the elite of Ravenloft schemers and plotters if they dare, or pit themselves against the unexpected horrors that lurk in the shadows of these 3 realms. Now, we only got 3 this time. However, these 3 realms really have not been detailed at all. You've gotten descriptions of them in the source books. Scholar of Decay told you some. That novel told you some about Richmond. The original Ravenloft 2 happens in Mordant. That horrible Howls in the Night module happened in Mordant. But you have not ever really gotten anything. And so at the time when this came out, this became my favorite because this was going to give me the most information I had no idea about. You had 3 domains, which really, I knew about them for what was written about them in the source books. And there was some good deal written about them, but nothing was compared to what was going to be done in these. And again, another fabulous book that just, oh man, just blew me away. And the reason that there was only 3 domains in this one is because, like I said, there had been no modules or no other supplements that describe these domains. So this is all new stuff coming out with it for it, and they had a lot of stuff to cover. I mean, they couldn't just retread some of the stuff that had gone on before, and it's very good. Again, honestly, man, these gazeers, man, they just blow me away. And you know, firearms, because Dementu is a firearm type domain. So you have Dominique Dionair, who is the Lord of Dementu. The Living Brain, Rudolf van Albrecher, who is kind of like his nemesis. He's an evil guy. He wants to control the domain. He's the Living Brain. Alan Ray, who is now moved. He was, you know, hanging around Darkon and all that stuff, but now he's got a job in Dementu, trying to track down the Living Brain. Because he's, you know, he's been hired to do so, and who better than the great detective? Of course, he doesn't know he's working for an evil guy as well. Lord Godfrey, who finally gets some attention, who had been neglected ever since Ravenloft 2, House on Griffin Hill, really. He's a ghost who rules Mordant. Lord Jules Weatherme, he's the ruler of Mordant. The human ruler of Mordant, and he's a good guy. He's the political ruler. He's not a bad guy. He's old. Pretty soon he's going to be dead, and rulership of the land is going to pass on to somebody else. Jacqueline Reiner, she's the Were-Rat Dark Lord of Richmelot, which is basically half human, half were-rats. She wants to propagate the race. And there you go. Fantastic. Must have. Next up, we have the Dungeon Master's Ravenloft Guide. I was not expecting this. Let's see what it is. It is in a land of days spent dreading the coming of the dark in a world ruled by horrors unimagined. It is a place of nights filled with terror, yet some hardy souls perverse in the struggle against evil. Though some may feel they have uncovered all there is to know about the world of Ravenloft, many secrets remain to be discovered. Now the classic Ravenloft game has its own Dungeon Master's Guide, fully compatible with the new 3.5 edition of Dungeons & Dragons. The Ravenloft Dungeon Master's Guide contains a wealth of vital information for your campaign. It offers ways to reshape the classes in the D&D Dungeon Master's Guide, provides tips on creating a properly horrific atmosphere for players, discusses ways to use Ravenloft in crossover games, contains delicious new magic items, prestige classes with alterations, and much more. Okay, so if you don't know, 3rd edition had some problems. Instead of just saying, okay, let's scrap it, come out with the 4th edition, they tweaked it, which became known as 3.5. It's only like a few years after 3rd edition. Now I gotta tell you something right there. So here's this cool map that comes in the Dungeon Master's Guide right there. I did not know what to expect from this book, to be honest with you. And it's thicker. It's a hell of a lot thicker than the core rule book. And what to say about it? Well, it's not the interesting read that the player's core rulebook was. I'll say that. I mean, it has techniques of terror. The world is basically it's basically this and the core rulebook are basically the black box. I don't know how else to say it. And this is where White Wolf started to falter. I'm sorry, this is where they really started to falter. They had a few hiccups coming out the gate. They got back on track with some of the VR arsenal and the Gazetteers, but then it started to falter. I didn't need this book. I had no problem running Ravenloft as it was. To be honest with you, I don't know why this was here, but it's basically, yeah, it's basically the red box. If you team this up with the core rulebook, it's basically the red box. But unfortunately, right after that came the Player's Handbook, version 3.5. You're sitting there like, what? What is it? What is this? I remember when this came out, and I was like, what? Didn't we just have all this stuff? And it's basically a freaking reprint of the core rule book that came out at the beginning, with a few rules tweaks here and there and a few things added here and there. Man, was I ticked when this came out, man. It's basically trying to fix things, and yeah, they changed the map to red. That's a big change. And it's supposed to be a companion piece with the Dungeon Master's Guide, but there was no reason for this. This does not add anything to anything. It's like I said, this was the time when things started to crumble. And these two products were kind of like the beginning of it. And I don't know what else to say. There's another product I don't have, and it's a reprint. It's oh man, what is it? It's not Denizens of Darkness. What is it? It's basically the Ravenloft Denizens of Darkness reprint. It's a damn Monster Manual reprint. Let me see. Yeah, with some corrections. Okay, but then they gave us the Taroka deck. Now, we'd gotten a Taroka deck in Forbidden Lore, and we got one in the red box. So they decided to give us a new one. However, this is the best Taroka deck because I'm going to take out the cards. These cards are a hell of a lot better. The art on them looks like a really good tarot card deck. I don't know how else to say it. It's done. The cards are bigger. The other Taroka deck cards were like small size, like regular playing cards, but these are big cards with cool art. And if you want a Taroka deck, this was the one to get. They did put some effort into it, and it's a good job. Good job. Next up is tier number 4. Twisted Shape Changers and Immortal Tyrants strike terror in the denizens of Ravenloft's southwest core. The twisted desires of Borka's dual rulers, the curse at the heart of Invidia's ruling family, and the savagery that reigns in the dark forces of Verbrake, and the cruelty of Altalin's master, and the greed that marks the rulers of Scythias evoke an atmosphere of horror that touches all who journey through these forsaken lands. The 4th Gazir explores the lands of Borka, Invidia, Verbrake, Valkan, and Scythias. 5 this time. Nodding landmarks and dangers, relating history and legend, and providing a practical assessment of each realm. Bold adventurers may experience these lands for themselves if they dare. Now, you're probably thinking, they're trying to cram too much into that. One domain is going to get shortchanged. Well, Verbrake is that domain that kind of gets shortchanged a little bit, but Verbrake is not going to have a lot of the same stuff that the others, because Verbrake is a land ruled by werewolves. Timothy Alfred rules Verbrake. He's a werewolf. And the only thing that lives in that domain is nothing but a bunch of forest, is werewolves. And it has really no cities. They do have a few crumbling human settlements in there where humans are trying to live. They're small and really insignificant. So there's really not big populations to go after. So that domain is short a little bit. It's the first time we've gotten that one. We've got Invidia from the Evil Eye. But this goes into detail more, and it's going to update us as to what's going on with the Dukar and his mother Gabrielle. Borka hasn't been detailed before, and it has two rulers, kind of. One's the true ruler, but the other one's there as well. Is a ruler in his own right. Valkland, which has been detailed in Dark Lords, but is now updated, and Sithicus, which is going to finally tell us who the hell the real Dark Lord of that domain is and what's going on. So again, another great book, must have, and yeah, a wealth of information. Again, let's look at the who's who, and we'll see who they go over. And we have Gabrielle, who is the Witch Dark Lord of Invidia. She's recovered from what the events in the Evil Eye and now trying to fight against her son. Okay, Malchilo Adier, the Dukar. Okay, we've got an update on him. There he is. He's grown super fast because he's like the Antichrist type thing. Ivana Bortisti, the Dark Lord of Borka, the true Dark Lord of Borka. Azrael Dak, we get stats on him from Night of the Black Rose and stuff. Ivan Desilnia, the Dark Lord of Borka. He's the other Dark Lord of Borka. Him and Ivan are cousins. She ruled Borka. He ruled Dorvinia. They're both poisoner type people. They're immune to poison, and but they can poison anybody around them and all that kind of stuff. He's a lot more crazy. She's really vain and evil. And when the Grand Conjunction happened, their domains kind of like merged together, and they ran to each other because they've always corresponded and had a good relationship with each other when they were their own rulers of domains. And then so when the Grand Conjunction ended, they happened to be next to another. Their domains kind of merged, and she's the one, the real Dark Lord. She's the one that can close the borders. She made him basically his enforcer, but they don't get along anymore. And so they can't kill each other by poison, so they keep playing these games, and it's pretty interesting. We finally get Enza, finally get her status as a Dark Lord, how she became it, what she's doing, what the deal with her is. I don't find her that interesting. I don't like her. She's nowhere near as cool as Lord Soth, but I understand Soth has to go. You know, he's back in Dragonlance, so. But I thought I could have thought somebody else better could have been a Dark Lord than her. We have Alfred Timothy the werewolf. Baron Ook von Karnoff, the Dark Lord of Valkland. He's a vampire. And there we go. Just one great read after another with this. And yeah. And you got 5 domains. Now we have the Van Richten's Guide to the Shadow Fae. Long have their ways remained hidden to the outsiders, veiled by the mysterious Shadow Rift, who are these creatures called Arak by some, Elffolk by others, Shadow Fae by most. What are their motives, and what threat do they represent to the lands that border the realm? Continuing the tradition of the Van Richten Guides, this volume reveals the exclusive creatures and all their sinister beauty. Discover their history and customs, unlock the magic and mystery of the Shadow Fae. Those who dare to pursue these beings may discover the strengths and weaknesses of those they hunt. A section for DMs gives guidelines for creating new Shadow Fae and ideas for using them in Ravenloft campaign. Again, really, it's nowhere near as good as the original ones, and it's because the Shadow Fae just don't float too many people's boat. You're only really going to deal with them in the Shadow Rift or a few of the lands around the Shadow Rift. Their stats and brief descriptions were in the Denizens of Darkness Monster Manual. You don't need a whole book on it. Although there's some good stories here with the Weathergrave, Fox Groves, a little bit of stuff on the Shadow Rift. Basically a kind of adventure type thing about stuff. It's basically, it's almost like it's Gazir on the Shadow Rift. I don't know how to say that, but nowhere near as cool detail. I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know how to explain it. It kind of wants to do all this stuff, but it doesn't succeed in a lot of things. I would have just liked a freaking new updated thing on the Shadow Rift, to be honest with you, instead of this. So this is another kind of disappointment. But if you like the Shadow Fae and that kind of stuff, then yeah, it's alright. But it's, like I said, it's nowhere near as good. The new Van Retchen guides are kind of, and it was funny was the Arsenal, Van Retchen's Arsenal was great, but the Walking Dead and that one just weren't cutting it for me. And then we have Gazir 5, the last one. It broke my heart. The ruthlessness of Nova Vasa's rulers, the desolation that is the realm of Keening, the eerie revelations of the Shadow Rift, and the horrid secrets at the heart of Tempest stand revealed as mirrors for the twisted desires of their Dark Lords. Discover the mysteries of the goblin cults of Tempest, the secret atop Mount Lammet in Keening, the abomination in the depths of the Shadow Rift, and the murderous machinations behind the scenes in Nova Vasa. The fifth Gazir dwells into the history and landscape of Nova Vasa, Tempest, Keening, and the Shadow Rift, describing the lore, landmarks, and societies of these realms of the Eastern Core. Only the bravest adventurers may enter these realms, only the luckiest may return to tell the tale. Now, you know that there was that whole book on the Shadow Rift in the regular one, and so you know the Shadow Rift's going to get a little bit of the shaft in this. Maybe that's why they did the Shadow Fae thing. Who knows? But they could have just put the Shadow Fae in this. At least stats for it. But we do get another great book. Detailing all of the domains. And you especially get what Aisling thinks about the Shadow. The Shadow Rift and all that kind of stuff. And so for our Who's Doomed, see who we get. Prince Othmar. He's the political ruler of Nova Vasa. He's not a good guy either, but he's no Malkin, but he's not a good guy. So he's important. Gwillian, sorcerer fiend, and there's kind of like an updated picture of him. As you can see, he's a lot like a Lovecraftian type thing. Sir Tristan Hergard / Malkin, the true ruler of Nova Vasa. Lady of the Lake, Dark Lord of Castle Island. So Castle Island is being acknowledged now as a full, its own little mini domain right there in the middle of Tempest, which I thought was a nice touch, to be honest with you. Lot, Prince of the Shadows, the Crippled King. So this kind of updates what's happened to Lot and Maeve after the Shadow Rift, and what kind of he's kind of gonna be up to, and be honest, he kind of still hasn't learned his lesson, which is weird. The three hags, the Dark Lords of Tempest. We get cool little things in them. We get Tristessa, the Queen of Tears, the Dark Lord of Keening, the Banshee. Get an update on her. We get Wynn, who was the main Inquisitor in Servants of Darkness. That and you find out he was kind of a good guy, and you get an update on him. So it's another excellent must-have. God, those Gazetters are so good. All right, so now we get Legacies of Blood. Great families of the core. Okay. Just as every Dark Lord has a curse, their blood also carries the seeds of greatness or infamy. Some who share a common legacy with the ruling families of Ravenloft rise to virtue, while others succumb to the lure of corruption. What is it like to share the blood of the Bortisti, to hear the secrets of the Von Zaroviches, or to carry the vestige of the Darkov curse? This book explores the histories of Ravenloft's most powerful families, providing information on how to create player characters and NPCs who bear the names of Mordenheim, Desilnia, or Reiner. New prestige classes, family feats, and heirloom magic provide a wealth of choices for players and DMs who wish to walk in the shores of the powerful and the damned. Now, this book was not needed. You didn't need it. You could have come out with something else. However, this book is good. And I'm glad they came out with it. Because all these families are major players in the core. You have the Bortisti family. We just saw them in Borca and Domlentu. I mean, Borca, we just dealt with him. The Dion Air family, well, he's the ruler of Domlentu. The Desilnia family, here we got the Drakov family, he knows Fognovia. The Godfrey family, Lord Godfrey is the Lord of Morden. The Hiragard family, Lord of Nova Vasa. The Mordenheim family, the Reiner family, and the von Zarovich family. And so, it's pretty neat that you might want to play as one of the descendant of one of these people, but it goes into each family's histories really good, and their histories were briefly touched upon, I remember, in the Black Box and a few other things. This really goes into their histories, and it really does them justice. And then we get a few more NPCs, okay, and even the von Zarovich family, and they don't really do anything to screw up continuity. So let's do that. But we have Anton Bortici, so Bevel, James Mausel, Celeste on air, Andre, and some of these guys are good. Rodan, Desilnia, some of these guys are bad. Sir Victor Hausinger, Michael Gendis. Most of these guys are new people you've never heard of before, okay? Nara Hierogard, Javier Reiner. But we do get Louise Reiner, who was in the Black Box as well. She's the twin sister of Jacqueline. She's kind of a rival. It's good to see that they put her in there. Helena von Zarovich, Andre Wessinger. So a lot of new people, a lot of new NPCs to populate your campaigns or put them in there. Some cool ideas about being a family member and how these kind of character classes and what kind of people they're going to be. And it was a good book. Not nowhere near the greatness of the Gaziers, but it was a good book. And I'd recommend it. Dark Tales and Disturbing Legends. Beware the tales told in darkness. Childhood legends, ghost stories, and cautionary tales take on a life of their own when surrounded by the mist of Ravenloft. From the immortal creature destined to eternal wandering to the sinister tailor known as Scissorman. From the family whose members all have dark secrets to a wedding night shattered by horror and the house that relives the atrocity at its core. 5 stories of classic terror becomes a setting for bold adventurers or helpless victims. This book revisits the old-fashioned horror story as viewed through the lens of Ravenloft and provides players and DMs with a chance to rewrite a horrific ending or become part of the recurring nightmare. Techniques for turning stories into games and adapting a tale to suit a particular group offer a handbook for creating and playing one-of-a-kind adventures that touch upon heroes' deepest fears. For this to be the last official Ravenloft product, stunk. It was an abomination. I hate this book. Mainly, a lot of it is, I will admit, because it's the last product, and because we couldn't get no more Gaziers. But this thing is not really a good book. Basically, what it is it's kind of it's kind of Book of Crypts or Chilling Tales. You have 5 different stories, and that's what they are. They're stories. You read them. You read a story, okay, and they could be interesting or something, and then there's an adventure, okay. You play the adventure. This is, see, by this point in time, I think they were figuring out, man, we really do need to make modules, but it's going to be too late. And this is what we got. And I think all the adventures in here really aren't that good, to be honest with you. Some of them are more templates, some of them are out and out adventures, and I was so disappointed with this book. I think I read it once and was like, I'm done with it. And so, White Wolf, Ravenloft is over with. That was the last official product. They would not seek, and I don't think Wizards of the Coast would give them the opportunity to renew the license. And so Ravenloft truly died at that point. And what a disappointing way to go. This being the last official product, the Gaziers being stopped before they got to realms unexplored with the clusters, the Islands of Terror, and the Two Seas. Man, I think all the time how good this would have been. And I never really understood why it ended. Hell, if anybody knows, let me know. I would love to know. Was it TSR just didn't want to give out the license anymore? I don't see why they would, though, because they're just getting paid for really not doing anything. And White Wolf, was the products not making enough money and White Wolf just couldn't afford it anymore? You know, I don't know. I wish I did. However, there was one more product supposed to be released, Van Ritten's Guide to the Mist. It did not get released officially, but the authors and stuff released it on the web because they had basically finished the product, and they loved Ravenloft and stuff, and so they wanted to give their fans one last treat. And you know, it's something like that were to happen. You know, thank God. You know, this was 2005. You know, if something like wanted to do something nice like that in these days, I don't think it would happen. But you know, TSR was all right with it. Everybody was all right with it. I mean, Wizards of the Coast was all right with it. So they went ahead and released it. And it's basically another VR guide. They introduced like a boogeyman in this one and Mist, and it's like, I don't know what to say. I mean, you can't complain because it's free, okay? Let's just say that. It goes over, you know, mist ways, secret places in the mist, those who dwell within the mist, the Vistanti, mist creatures, stuff like that. And like I said, you can't complain. And it updates some stuff that happened to the twins. You know, to what's kind of gone on, happened to them recently. It's like the most recent thing that had happened to them, and you know, it kind of took a little bit of a toll on them. And as you can see, there's no art in this because they just didn't have it. But we get Dr. Alex Pinero, the Telling Man. He's like this new baddie villain type thing. And Salazar, he comes back. He was introduced in a Ravenloft product long ago, and he kind of been forgotten as well. Who do we have? Who's this? Yeah, Salazar. Yeah. So they kind of update him, which is always nice to see. And then, you know, new creatures and stuff like that. Really, it's not that great. It's another VR guide, done by the Weatherme Foxgroves, and so it's nowhere near as good as the originals. And honestly, I found the Mist things to be a little bit boring. Now the thing with the Telling Man and stuff was pretty neat, but and then of course this ends with the Foxgroves being in a bad place, and so we never got any resolution. And It's the end of Ravenloft as we know it, and I don't feel fine. So Ravenloft was dead again. White Wolf attempt to revive Ravenloft was really a mixed bag. The core book was good. The Van Richten Arsenal was good. The Gaziers were, I loved them. I don't care what anybody says, they were fantastic to me. But the rest of the other books, their VR guides and stuff like Champions of Darkness and Heroes of Light and the DM guide and all that stuff were okay to not good. And so White Wolf's attempt at Ravenloft historically has been considered adequate, mixed. I think it's a little bit above adequate because they didn't do any modules, which I think could have put them into the great. And because other than the Gaziers, I mean, and the Van Richten Arsenal, there's really nothing outstanding about that. Their take on Ravenloft. I'm sorry. And you know, what can you say? I mean, it's nowhere near as good as under TSR's watch. So I don't know what to tell you about that. I would get, if you were somebody who wanted to go back and collect Ravenloft and say, I'll just ignore the White Wolf era, don't. Get the core book and get the Gaziers. Get the Gaziers. They will give you so much information and read so well, you'll love them. And if you can, get the VR Arsenal. Everything else can go to, you can just ignore. So that's it for Ravenloft. However, there are a few things I'd like to mention, because technically I guess that is not the end of Ravenloft. In 2006, TS Wizards of the Coast did a thing called Expedition to Castle Ravenloft. It was kind of a reprint, I guess, or try to a reboot or a reimagining of the original Ravenloft module from back in 1983. Now, the campaign setting of Ravenloft is nowhere mentioned in this. The adventure is more than just the town's under attack, go after his castle. They do add some more things to pad it out, but Strahd is got elven blood in them, and I don't know. I remember seeing that, and I bought it, and I remember selling it not too long after. I was very unhappy with that. I think my main big pissed off moment with it was why not just bring back the campaign setting? Why are you making a big hardcover third, if you include House of Strahd, this is the third time the original i6 module has been reprinted, and you're just adding new stuff to it, and it's just, I don't know, I didn't care for it. I don't recommend it. It has none of the flavor of the Ravenloft campaign setting. And the Ravenloft campaign setting is just so much more than Strahd von Zarovich and the original i6 Ravenloft module. There were a couple other books that they tried to get back going for Ravenloft. A couple novels. I think two of them, I think there were three. I want to say two of them got released. One of them was available for web. For the web. Let me see. Heaven's Bones, Matthias Court, and Black Crusade. Now, I think Heaven's Bones and Matthias Court did get published. Black Crusade did not. I think you can get it off the web. They're called Ravenloft Dominion novels because Ravenloft was something different at this time. This was in 2008 and 2009. I don't know what the hell 4th edition was doing Ravenloft and all this kind of crazy stuff. They didn't bring back the Ravenloft campaign setting. They hinted at it. They mentioned it. Hey, it's here, but it's in Shadowfell or whatever the hell that is. And those novels really don't have anything to do with the Ravenloft you know and love. And the fact that, hell, the third one didn't even get published shows how good they were. They were just written by authors who really, I don't know if they were told to come up with your own stuff and we'll put it in a Ravenloft, but they really didn't have anything to do with Ravenloft. And then just most recently, I think a year or two ago, they came out with the Ravenloft. I don't know if it's what you consider. I don't know what edition it is. Well, anyways, it's basically Wizards of the Coast kind of got the idea to reprint or redo some of their legendary greatest modules. It came out in 2015. They kind of did something like that with Tomb of Horrors, which is a landmark module, and stuff like that. And it is more, again, than just they made it into a mini campaign. Okay, it's a mini campaign. Takes place in Barovia, but it's, I don't know what to say. It's a Return to Ravenloft is what it's called, and it has no real mentioning of the campaign setting. Again, it's the campaign setting's gone. This is basically another I6 for 5th edition this time now, because we need a 5th edition. And yeah, they did put a lot more into it. It's a lot better than the 4th edition Ravenloft, so I will give it that. I downloaded, they gave you like a free adventure, and I've looked at it really good at stores, but it's not Ravenloft. It's just not. God, I wish they would bring the Ravenloft back, but it's not. So I basically have just kind of ignored that as well. So that's my take and review on the Ravenloft campaign setting. And I'll make that clear. Not just a bunch of i6 reboots and reversions of the Ravenloft module. It lasted for 15 years. 1990 basically to 2005. It was a fantastic setting. It was something that was very near and dear to my heart. And I still to this day miss it a lot. I wish somebody would do it justice. If I had $1 billion, I would try to lease the property from Wizards of the Coast, or whoever the hell owns Dungeons and Dragons now. I think Mattel or Hasbro owns them now. And restart the line. We start right back where we left off with Gazir number 5. We'd be doing Gazir number 6. We'd keep the status quo. We might advance the timeline just a little bit, and we'd start making some modules and some real good source books. That's what I would do. But that'll never happen. So all I have are these. You can find a lot of this stuff on eBay for sale, some of it cheap. And if you love 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons and you want to get into a new hobby, hell, even if you are looking for a new hobby to get into and you want to get 2nd edition and you want to get into something and you like Dungeons and Dragons, it's not hard. Pick a campaign setting. I recommend the Ravenloft campaign setting. Get a Dungeon Master's Guide 2nd edition, a Player's Handbook Guide 2nd edition, and that's all you need. That's it. And you'll find a hobby. Retro is kind of back in a little bit that you can do and enjoy with your friends. And hey, these things are still great golden oldies and still great stuff to play and entertain yourself with if you like Dungeons and Dragons. And you have to remember, 3rd edition came and went, 4th edition came and went. They're now on 5th edition. 2nd edition lasted a long time and will always be, to me, the best edition. And Ravenloft was, to me, the best campaign setting. And so, if you got a few dollars and you got a few friends and you want to start doing something new, if current role playing is bleh to you, and you want to get in something that's going to take have hours of fun, that's highly recommended. And now I've gone over each Ravenloft product. You can see what you like, pick and choose, and go with it. I would also recommend the Fraternity of Shadows, the home of Ravenloft on the net. They are still going. They produce a lot of fan-made material. Some of the material they produced or put on their website was created by some of the original authors who worked on Ravenloft products. Like I said, something like Shadow of the Knife, Death Undaunted, a whole bunch of bits and pieces on where they were going, some campaign ideas about where they were going, some good fan-made netbooks, the Nocturnal Sea Gazier, the Sarange Gazier, some good stuff on that website. They do still every year a Quote the Raven yearly, once a year magazine or netzine or whatever you want to call it, written by fans to create submissions to them, and they print the best ones. And there's some really good stuff in some of those, and they have they're on like 20 something, so they have 20 years worth, just about, or 20 issues worth of stuff on there. Some really good netbooks, some really good stuff, and player aids, all that kind of stuff, charts, maps, good stuff for anybody wanting to get into Ravenloft. I highly recommend that website. So, I hope you enjoyed our Ravenloft retrospect for the month of October. Maybe I can do something like this again some other time, on some other role-playing stuff, but this is a good gothic, scary setting, and it fits the month of October perfectly. So, until the next time, I will see you then.